and welcome to our interlanguage analysis. This group consists of Ditte.
Hi.
And Paula.
Hi. And Pia.
Hi. This text is written by a student from the 8th grade at Lindevægskolen, and one of the internship groups, they were teaching this class for a longer period where they were teaching about learning styles, and this assignment was done in the end of this period. The students got this task in class, and it was a set time frame of 20 to 25 minutes where they could write their assignment. They were given the task by the interns, and they got the opportunity to choose between 3 questions. They were divided into different levels, and this student chose to take the easiest question, which was, what learning styles are there and what is your learning style? Okay, as a side note, the students did not know that the questions were different levels. They were just supposed to pick one that seemed fitting for them. Now I'm gonna read the text out loud. My learning style is to both listen and watch the task, for example, maths, when the teacher shows me how to do it. That's how I learn best, because I find it a lot more easier than other things. That's how my mind works. I like copy it in my mind and then try to do the task. And if I'm wrong, I of course ask for help. I also find it a lot easier when I watch a video about a project I'm going to do or talk about. Alright, the question the student picked was, what learning styles are there and what is your learning style? The student answers the last part of the question about what your learning style is, but he leaves out to answer what different learning styles there are. He is able to say what specific characteristics of his learning types there are and give examples of it. For instance, he says, for example, maths when the teacher shows me how to do it. The student expresses attitudes. The student also reflects on different scenarios. For example, if he doesn't know how to continue with his task, he's gonna ask for help. So he writes, and if I'm wrong, I of course ask for help. The student is also able to come up with examples that underlines his learning type. For example, he says that he finds it a lot easier when I watch a video about a project. He does not remember the academic word for his learning type, which would be kinesthetic, but he manages to describe it with his own words what this learning type is about. The text does not have any headline or title, but the task also doesn't require it, and we're not specifically asking for it. As I told, the learners were told to choose one of 3 questions that were based on the material that the interns had taught throughout the week. We would say that the genre is a report about evaluation of own learning. And it's not necessarily something these students practice a lot or have done before, and they probably don't know how the structure of a text like this should be. The level of style is appropriate because it's a simple answer, and the vocabulary is fitting to the given task. Now I'm going to talk about coherence and cohesion. The learner sticks to the same general idea and topic all the way through. There's not really a structure in the text other than the student starts with describing his own learning style and afterwards undermining it with examples. He though leaves out the first part of the question, which he does not at all answer. The learner uses coordinate conjunctions such as or, and. The learner as well uses subordinate conjunctions such as when, how, and if. The learner as well uses linking circumstantials such as also, which we can see in line 9, and he as well uses articles, like the A in line 10, and he has no problems with this at all. In general, the student uses present tense, and in the last sentence, he actually looks to the future. He says, I am going to. The learner is not using circumstantials, because he's not much of a risk taker, you could say. But the text is still coherent. The punctuation is right. He uses the right punctuation, and he partly misses the comma.
In the following section, we talk about grammar at the sentence level. The sentence structure itself is modestly complex, and if we, for example, look at the first sentence, which sounds like following: my learning style is to both listen and watch the task, for example, math, when the teacher shows me how to do it. Here we have a main clause and a subordinate clause, and most of the sentences in the text are structured like that. The text is about the student's own learning style and his own thoughts and ideas about it, and thus I think that the sentences fit very well to that subject and the communicative situation. He uses different beginnings of sentences. For example, here we have my, that's, and. When we talk about the subject-verbal agreement, the student gets it right all the time. The next part will be group structure, different word groups. We have already discussed the learner's use of the different axes of orientations, and he can use simple verbs. He can also use the present tense correctly. He uses that coherent in the whole text, except the last sentence is actually a going to future tense, which is... I also find it a lot easier when I watch a video about a project I am going to do or talk about. He is also able to use the articles, for example, the task in line 7 and a project or a video, as for example here in line 10. When we get back to the verbs, we discovered a problem that he has here in line 6. Where he says it's the infinitive of a verb. That's how my mind works. I like copy it in my mind. It would be I like to copy or I like copying. So he has maybe a problem with the infinitives. We also discovered that the student is comparing adjectives and at the same time also testing hypotheses. In line 9 we have it is line 9 and line 5, where he uses a comparison 2 times, and the first time he uses is wrong, and the second time he uses it right. In line 5, it is a lot more easier than other things, and in line 9 he then writes, I also find it a lot easier. So he's actually trying to figure out how to use this construction correctly. He also uses most of the prepositions right, but there is a problem here in line 2, for example, where he writes he likes to both listen and watch the task, for example, maths. The correct word would be in maths. When talking about punctuation, we can say that he uses full stops correctly and most of the commas correctly. We found 1 comma which is wrong. It's in line 10. When I watch a video, comma, about a project I'm going to do. There are some other places in the text where there could be a comma or there could not be a comma. It's not quite clear. So my suggestion would be that if the student is in doubt, maybe we should not put a comma. Or maybe then instead write shorter sentences. The next section is grammar below sentence level, and the first part is vocabulary and items. And as I've mentioned before, the text is supposed to be about the student's own attitudes and feelings and ideas of their learning type. And even though the student doesn't remember the right term for his learning type, like the official term, he manages to describe it very well, the characteristics of the kinesthetic learning type. He has a very profound use of his own vocabulary. It is not very advanced, but it's very stable, and mostly, but it's nearly free of spelling mistakes. Here to say is that the student is not a risk taker, so he relies very much of the vocabulary that he knows is right. In this specific context, the student did not use any helpful tools, as for example a computer or a phone with a dictionary device. Neither did the student have access to a real dictionary, so he was he needed to rely on his own memory of what the interns had taught him during the last week. He though had the option to contact the interns that were in the room if he needed help, and that was also made clear before the start of this task. The next heading is called spelling, and he does not have any audio-visual problems, and he uses the amount of solid vocabulary correctly. We realized there was one Danicism, which is in the project. A thing we stumbled upon that happens very often in this text is that the student does not write the beginning of a sentence with a capital letter. It happens nearly in every sentence except here in line 9, where he writes a capital I. And where we're now already talking about the I, the student writes the I small everywhere except here. So that is a profound continuous mistake he makes. Now we're gonna talk about the interpretation of the analysis of the text we just made. And first and foremost, one can say that the text is coherent and the learner sticks to the subject, which is his learning type. The text is easy to understand and easy to read. There are no major spelling mistakes and the coherence is good. And also the handwriting is reasonable. The learner does not remember the term of the specific learning type, but he manages to describe it with his own words. We detected one hypothesis testing, which is in line 5 and in line 9, where the student compares things. It is a lot more easier than other things, and later on he writes, I also find it a lot easier. So that shows actually that the student is aware of different possibilities and is trying to test. So he's actually learning or in the process of realizing what is the right fit.
So now I'm going to give feedback to the student as a teacher. And I'm going to do it in English. Often I will do it in Danish with the students, but for this occasion I will do it in English. So, I've read your text and it's very good. You kept to the subject, didn't answer all of it, but that might have been because you misunderstood the task. I don't know. You answered the last part of the red question, where it should have been the entire question, but it might have been that you misunderstood what we instructed to. But it was very good and you kept to the subject. We do have something that we could work on. For next time, I would like you to work on your I. Do you remember in class we worked with a capital I when it's jeg in Danish? This just makes it more clear what you mean, and it's the correct way. So next time, maybe look at that when you might read through the text and correct yourself. That would be completely fine. You don't need to do it while you're writing. You can just correct yourself afterwards. Yes, you also have a good, you try out to say, you test out where you say a lot more easier or a lot easier. The a lot easier is correct, but it's good that you're trying out. I would actually encourage you to try more things out. it seems like you're keeping to what you know, so you don't make spelling mistakes, and there's almost no spelling mistakes. You can get them off. I give you them afterwards, so you can look through them. But I'll just say that maybe try out. It's okay if you make more spelling mistakes, because that's the way that we learn. And if you try out, then I can correct you and then I can help you more. So I would encourage you to do that. But all in all, I will say that it's a good assignment, or not an assignment, a good written report. We still have some things we can work on, but that's just all good. So do you have any questions for me?